Well, Your Honor, Your Worship, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a more than gracious introduction. I appreciate it enormously. I should probably have been introduced to the theme song from Mission Impossible. I'm speaking in the shadow of His Royal Majesty, the Duke of York, asked to make sense of an election that's barely over, told the evening was tightly scripted, so keep it short, and I'm the only thing between you and supper. I'm reminded of the words of the French mathematician Blaise Pascal, who said, "I've made this letter longer than usual only because I've not had the time to make it shorter." I want to start by acknowledging the extraordinary students that we saw tonight before us, the junior achievers. They're absolutely remarkable, and of course, it gives us huge hope for the future, seeing the depth and breadth of that talent. And I also want to honor the individuals who are going to be honored tonight as your laureates this evening. These are people that I know and admire enormously, and I believe we have a huge debt of gratitude that we owe them. These are the people, and as many others are in the room, these are the people that create the investments, that pay the taxes, generate the wealth to pay for the government and all the quality of services that we sometimes take for granted. So, to all of them, congratulations and thank you. Now, we want to talk about the recent election for a minute or two, but before then, I'm just going to tell you a little anecdote that I told when I spoke to the Business Summit 15 years ago here in British Columbia. Very same story. A terrible flood had swept across the town. The town preacher was stranded in his church. Seeing him through the church window, rescue officials came by in a motorboat. They yelled at him, "We'll throw you a rope. Grab it, we'll save you." The preacher replied, "No, thank you. I'm a righteous man. The Lord will save me." So the water kept rising and the preacher was forced to retreat to the roof. A rescue helicopter was dispatched. It flew overhead and it dropped a rope. "Grab the rope," they yelled from the helicopter. "Oh no," said the preacher. "I'm a righteous man. The Lord will save me." Well, the water kept rising. The preacher was swept away, and soon he's at the pearly gates being met by St. Peter. The very angry preacher yells at St. Peter, "I'm a righteous man. I've lived a moral life. I've gone to church every Sunday. Why didn't you save me?" St. Peter yelled back, "We sent you a boat. We sent you a helicopter. Why didn't you grab the rope?" Well, I tell that story because an election is just finished. And it's fair to say that the people in this room, in large measure, in the business community of BC, dodged a bullet. And the fact is that you have re-elected a party dedicated to growing the economy, and you all have an obligation to grab the rope and help them to do exactly that. Governments can't do it alone. They need help. And this government needs help in growing this economy and creating the quality of life that everybody aspires to. So congratulations to Premier Christy Clark and her members. You will continue to be Premier of one of the most blessed places on the planet. Your election victory defied every poll and every pundit. We're all humbled by the power of your conviction, your determination, and your relentless optimism. And every person in this room is deeply invested in your success. And to Adrian Dix and all of the others who ran in this election, politics is a tough and often thankless job. But the province and the country are all well served by the quality of our candidates. We're better off as a result of the fine people who run for office. It is what makes our democracy so robust. But we Canadians are also a little bit like the Irish. Here comes my leader. Pass me a rock. But to the leader of the NDP, I would say to you this: if it's any comfort, you now know what it's like to be a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. I told you that time was short, and to get my money's worth, I'm going to have to speak to you in point form. So here it goes. Consider these the highly subjective, I repeat, subjective musings of a former politician with nothing to lose, speaking with the total freedom and perhaps the recklessness of the unshackled. So, first of all, we're off an election that was on a date set by legislation. I would implore this government and other governments across Canada, get rid of fixed election dates. This is an Americanism that does not belong in the British parliamentary system. It's most often honored in its breach. And what it results in is endless and costly campaigning at a time when people should be focused on governing. Look at the United States of America. Endless campaigning, constant gridlock. Why would we emulate a model that's such a demonstrable failure? And speaking of America, it's the world's most powerful economy. It's our greatest friend. We admire it enormously, and we are deeply admiring for the robustness of its economy and the way that it just continues to roll forward in spite of adversity. But its might is not because of its government, but in spite of it. It's a totally dysfunctional model, completely gridlocked, ground to a standstill by big money, interest groups, incessant election cycles, the lack of party discipline, and total polarization. If it's any, or I should say, is it any wonder that Robin Williams once was quoted as saying, Canada is like a nice family living over a biker bar. So my question is, why should we embrace ideas from a form of democracy that is essentially dysfunctional? So let's get rid of those Americanisms. Let's get rid of referendums. We elect people to lead, not to cowardly check the way the wind is blowing. We elect people expecting that they will be better informed than we are on the issues and think longer term about the greater good of the greater number. After Henry Ford invented the first auto, he was asked if he had done it based on market research. He replied, if we'd asked them what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So elect your members to lead and hold them to account. If you don't like their leadership, kick them out of office. That's your right. The election will be the referendum on their leadership. Reject recalls. Again, it is polarizing and it's disruptive. That's what elections are for. If you don't like your member, kick them out. Reject proportional representation. Let leaders lead. Let them make the tough decisions and face the electorate on their choices on Judgment Day. Shared leadership is responsible for a huge number of governments all around the world being unable to face up to the huge challenges that we have to face up to during this perilous times. Reject public inquiries except in the rarest of circumstances. They're a godsend to the press, they're a godsend to lawyers, which probably means they're not a godsend to you. Now, having delivered all of these complete platitudes, I'd be a total wimp tonight if I didn't weigh in on the pipeline debate. So, here goes. I understand the British Columbia perspective on pipelines, although I would have to say when all of the political smoke clears, I hope there's going to be more light and less noise. 20% of Canada's economic growth last year came from increased investments in oil and gas. The Canadian economy last year lost $25 to $30 billion because of its inability to reach competitive markets with our energy products. Every single nickel ended up in the United States of America. The United States of America has us over a barrel as our only customer. Why would we willingly want to transfer $25 to $30 billion of our national wealth across the border every year? If we are unable to get major pipeline expansions, increased takeaway capacity in this country, we will forego $1.3 trillion of GDP and $276 billion in taxes from 2011 to 2035. That's over $1,200, in fact, per year for every Canadian. So we have to cast this debate a lot wider. This is about the environment. It's about Aboriginal rights. It's about provincial rights. It's about federal rights. But it's also about the quality of life of all Canadians. This is about nurses and doctors and teachers. This is about better roads, better municipal spending. This is about a whole lot of issues that are getting lost in the noise. I'll give you an example that you wouldn't think about very much. In the East Coast, where I'm from, we've welcomed a pipeline from Alberta. And that pipeline, if it's built, will fuel our refineries and provide value-added and export opportunities. Right now, we're paying world prices. We're importing oil from overseas at a cost of billions of dollars, very high prices, that is absolutely crushing to the industry in the East. Now, put yourself in our shoes. We have an opportunity. We have enough producer support and shipper support, I believe, to build a pipeline all the way through to the Atlantic Ocean in New Brunswick. What if the government of Quebec or Ontario or Manitoba decides it's not going to let a pipeline go through its province on its way to the Atlantic Ocean? This would leave us out of a chance to share in the national wealth. We would feel like second-class citizens in our own country. Again, it complicates the debate when you realize that there are a lot of diverse interests at play here. The government of Canada has a constitutional jurisdiction over pipelines enshrined in the Constitution and has the right to run pipelines between provinces. Full stop. We know that we can't have a country where every province is a toll keeper on railroads and highways and pipelines and electrical transmission lines so that we end up with a balkanization of our country. We know that that will not succeed. However, our country was never created on confrontation. It was always based on talking, on consensus, on trying to find a peaceful way to deal with our issues. And we need the Prime Minister to start talking to premiers. We need the premiers to start talking to each other. As business leaders, we need to talk to each other. We need Canadians to start talking to each other. As citizens, we need to speak out because there are more interests at stake here than meet the eye. We need to figure out how all Canadians can benefit from these great resources. We need to find a Canadian way, a Canadian solution to this dilemma. There are 1,000 scientists working in Alberta universities right now on improving the environmental efficiency of the oil sands. Perhaps there should be 1,000 scientists in British Columbia working on pipeline integrity or tanker safety. Perhaps there should be a refinery built in British Columbia, such as proposed by David Black. With $30 billion a year being vaporized from our national wealth, surely to goodness it makes a lot of sense for projects like this to be looked at seriously. Perhaps, again, in my own province of New Brunswick, there should be an upgrader built, where it's estimated that it would cost 40% less to build it than it would in the province of Alberta. And the Minister of Energy for Alberta said he doesn't care where in the country value-added infrastructure is built for energy, as long as it's built in the country. All of these options must be on the table. We can't solve the problem if we don't talk. And if we don't solve the problem, we will have recklessly reduced the quality of life of all Canadians. Now, I've been deliberately provocative, but I want to end on a positive, in fact, even a joyful note tonight. Because we're standing here in this province, which I think people here sometimes have the luxury of taking for granted. But we're standing here tonight in one of the most magnificent pieces of geography on the planet. Vancouver's sponsorship of the 2010 Olympics and Paralympic Winter Games set the standard for hosting such events and had Canadians swollen with pride. I was here for the seventh game of the hockey final, or not the seventh game, but of the game of the hockey finals between Canada and the United States. And I don't think in my entire life I have felt as much electricity and excitement and joy and pride and patriotism. And when I was out on the street yelling, I could hear an echo all the way from Atlanta, Canada, coming across the mountain. This was a joyous, jubilant occasion, an occasion where you made us so proud in the eyes of the world to be Canadians. This is a province of superb educational facilities, receives the largest number of international students in the entire country. You live in a province of breathtaking scenery, diverse geographic regions and climates, and a rich, rich multicultural history. Your dynamic arts and culture scene boasts the third largest film and television production center in North America. BC is home to more than half of Canada's wildlife and fish species. It's the most biologically diverse province in Canada and one of the most biologically diverse in the world. Your largest city, Vancouver, was named by The Economist for the third time in 2011 as the world's most livable city. And according to institutions like the United Nations, British Columbia is the best place in the world to learn, to live, and to play. But you know all of this because you live here. And in spite of all of these rich blessings in your province, we are first and foremost Canadians. We live in the most blessed country on the planet. We've just witnessed an election in your province that's a tribute to the robustness of our democracy. We live in a country that has been able to survive better than any other industrialized country the recent prolonged downturn as a result of our prudence and discipline in balancing budgets and living within our means. We are a country where brave young men and women have fought time and time again on behalf of democracies around the world. We're a country of caring and sharing and giving where public health care is considered to be a national treasure. We are a nation of immigrants who welcome immigrants and embrace their cultures and values. We have a greater percentage of foreign-born citizens than any other country in the G8, and we've been more successful in integrating our newcomers than any other country in the world. We are the envy of the world. And we are more than a collection of provinces. That's not what a country is. We are more than a collection of provinces. We're a country. At heart, our provincial boundaries are meaningless to us. As much as I love my province of New Brunswick, and I do, if I were backpacking across Europe, I can guarantee you it would not be a New Brunswick flag that I'd be carrying. It would be the Canadian flag. I'm first and foremost a Canadian, and I know the same is true for you. Thank you.